Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast exploring music, education, technology, and the intersections between them, with a special focus on the productive and creative process. I'm your host, Robbie Burns. Thanks to my sponsor this week, Scale Exercise Play-Along Tracks. With me today is host of the iPad Pros podcast, Tim Chaten. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm excited. We're going to be talking all about Apple's Keynote from the Worldwide Developer Conference last week. I just can't help myself. It's a time of year.
They're fun.
It's fun to talk about, and it has great implications for people in music, people in education, all people. And I'm pretty excited about it. It's been over a week now, so like I know you've been actually testing some of the beta software releases over the past week. I have not, but I know that lots of little bits of information have kind of come out from people who have been testing it. Some of the things I've learned, I've seen from your Twitter account, and I think it's like kind of soaked in a little bit over the past week. So I'm excited to kind of talk about it in that state of mind.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun week and some huge announcements that really changed the type of work and kind of work you can do on iPad, just the kind of workspaces you can imagine setting up for yourself. And people that may not have considered an iPad may now think it's a valuable option,
right? Which
is cool.
Right. I want to get into that and sort of maybe do like a state of the iPad, but I definitely want to cover all the new features that were announced for all the platforms. I think first though, I want to do a short bit of music ed tech news, and I want to also more thoroughly kind of just address like who you are and your show. I had the awesome opportunity. You invited me on the iPad Pros podcast a couple times over the past few years, once to talk about music notation software, and another time just to talk about some of my iPad workflows in the music classroom. You have even another episode about this very topic that was recently. So if someone wants to go more in depth on WWDC, you've got it all. If someone's just a general iPad enthusiast and wants to learn more, I feel like your show is the show, the iPad show. You care to talk about it?
Thank you. Yeah, I try. Yeah, it's I did a show back when the iPad was launched in 2010, and that ended. And then when the iPad Pro was announced, shortly after that, I decided, hey, let me get back into this. I love the iPad, and let me make a show dedicated to it, because there really aren't any shows right now dedicated to the topic. It's a topic of interest on many Apple shows, but it's one of many topics.
There used to be a show I really liked called Canvas that was pretty iPad.
Yep.
Pro-like, and
Fraser Spears and Federico. Yeah, Federico's done a couple shows on and off different runs.
Yeah, which has been cool because Fraser is in education, so that's kind of a cool show. But yours has sort of like picked up, I feel like, where that leaves off. And one of the things that we both do in common across these two shows is that sometimes software developers will come on and talk about things, and you've had some of the same software developers who have been on this show, like Greg Pierce of the App Drafts and Daniel Spreadbury of Dorico. Like, you've had them on too, and have had
I think episode 4 or 5 was with the Notion folks, the very first notation app worth anything on iPad, I think, back in the early days.
Hey, and also there's just a little sneak preview of this show. The next episode is going to feature it's going to be all about StaffPad, which I know you've also had David William on.
Awesome.
Yeah,
yep, I have.
So he's the next guest here too, and it's just it's always fun to talk with the people who make the stuff that we like, but it's also fun to talk about people who are just sort of like keeping their ear to the ground, because I feel like this is the kind of in the spirit of what I want to do with this show, is to just sort of like be excited about things that are going to make my life, my working life, easier and have less friction, so that I can be focused on being a creative person and not a fiddly tech person.
Right.
So let me just say this one bit of news. We were just talking about it right before we recorded. Dorico, they've been in this segment a lot lately, but they just keep iterating on their iPad and desktop apps, and the recent update to the iPad version will now allow you to do a lifetime purchase. And I don't want to get entirely at this point into how I feel about that as a business model. I just know that I think a lot of people will like it, who like big purchases in the creative professional industry tend to have audiences who I feel like are the last holdouts on this like subscription future that we're living in.
Right.
I see on the user forums of apps, especially like music software, like a lot of people have feelings and emotions about paying $4 a month for something. So I think that there are definitely a lot more than 0 people who will be pleased to know that they can buy Dorico for their iPad as a one-time purchase.
Yeah, and I have the subscription, of course, because it's a great app and I want to support them. But it's very tempting to, towards the end of my year to convert to the 120 for a lifetime. It's a tempting thing to consider.
And you don't just know Dorico for iPad because you're trying to stay afloat on everything that is iPad. You actually have some musical background, which probably would be interesting to our listeners.
Yeah, I was a music composition major, so I cut my teeth on Finale 2006, I believe, was the version I knew in and out. But kind of after I graduated college, I don't work in music anymore, but that's what I studied in college, and did a whole bunch of in high school and prior. And but I kind of stopped composing for a while because I had a really old Mac that was just not fun to work on, and doodling on paper isn't as enjoyable for me, at least. And then Dorico came out, and it's like kind of opened the doors to be able to do real compositions again on the iPad. Like I've played around with some of the other apps out there. None of them really clicked, and they have a workflow in Dorico with external like MIDI keyboards that just like it feels right at home for an old Finale user.
Yeah, I think there's a point in which like a lot of technology tools often I feel like as they improve they limit me less, but it's very rare where I can say that some sort of piece of hardware or software actually like itself. The workflow of it is so frictionless and inspiring to work that I just want to be creative in front of it. And that's kind of, it seems like how you're feeling with Dorico for iPad.
Yeah, it gets you into a flow state for sure. Like you can be improvising and then like say, yeah, that's what I want. I mean, go with that and kind of go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, like I said, we're going to talk all about the keynote from the developer conference last week. I kind of just took some loose notes of things that excited me. I figured, can we just go in order of how Apple announced the features?
Sure.
Sure.
That would be starting with iOS, generally speaking, the iPhone.
So I know that like kind of as we were prepping for this, like we wanted the iPad definitely is. There's a lot to say about it, but like for me personally, this was the most exciting part of the keynote. I am most excited about because what is going to happen to the lock screen in the fall? By the way,
are you a lock screen enthusiast? Is that what we're
I'm a lock
here?
Screen enthusiast. Yeah. So for those who don't know, typically these operating systems will come out like in between September and October, basically the next fall of the next year, and the whole summer. At some point, there will be public betas that people can download. I'm supposed to be responsible and tell my listeners not to do that, but I'm myself going to probably do it on at least my phone. So don't probably do it, though, unless you're not afraid of breaking your stuff. So, I mean, yeah, the thing is this. Like, the lock screen is, I think with the new feature for these, like, new lock screen features that were announced, it's like a lot of people really resonated with all the, like, customization of widgets a couple years ago. And
yeah.
And not as many people resonated with, but what I resonated with was all these new features where you can, like, customize your own Do Not Disturb variants, what Apple calls focus modes. And
they really beefed that up this year. It's the final version. If 1.0 is now here, basically. We had a beta last year, and this feels finished.
Right, because setting up the focus modes, and educators are genuinely excited when I show them what I'm doing with focus modes, but not everybody is excited when I show them, like, the setup process.
Yeah, last year, for reference, I set up like contact groups to make it easy to just go individually click, and just like select every single person, because I wanted focus modes where pretty much anyone could get through, because I was like using focus mode to change home screens and things like that weren't really all about being focused. Like so this year you can just either do the inclusion or exclusion model, so you won't need to go through a million people in your contacts.
Right. So, like, the idea is, like, if let's say that you are at work and you want only your spouse to be able to text you, like, their notifications to text you while you're at work, and then maybe, like, there's only a handful of apps you want to be able to notify you. You would kind of, like, you go into the focus settings, tell your phone this, but now it works the other way. You can instead do say like, hey, only these people can get through, rather than here are all the people who I do not want to get through. You're not like manually telling your phone every single thing you don't want to be able to get through. It's like the opposite direction. Because if you're making a do not disturb mode, you ideally want less notifications, not more. So you're trying to like think about the very few things you do want. And so you kind of customize these notifications, but you can also have, in the current version of a focus mode, you can have your entire home screen layout change based on what kind of focus you're in. And you can even have those focus changes be automated in the Shortcuts app. So like when I get to work, my work focus goes on. And it's one of these things that I have started to take for granted, because when I told my phone the first time it offered me to turn on that focus, I just said, yeah, sure, let's try it. Let's see how it goes. And the amount of like sanity that I now have at work, because I'm not constantly checking my messages and my email, like only my music team and my wife can notify me when I'm in work focus, and everything else just is sort of in Slack, because I have a Slack with my music team. And then I also can like have, like certain apps on my home screen, like I can have like an OmniFocus perspective. That's my to-do app. But it can have a perspective of just tasks related to work. And
developers can now more easily check your focus and link a part of their app to that focus. So for example, a mail app can like put your non-work accounts in like kind of quiet mode where it's kind of hidden away from you. And same with messages. You can have messages that filter out and only show you the list of people that you want to see at that focus. So OmniFocus potentially could like have a perspective link to that focus and do cool things.
That's really what I'm hoping. So iOS, I didn't even say the name of the operating system. So iOS 16 is the one that was announced by Apple last week, and this is a new feature of focus modes, is what you're calling, what you just described. And it's an API they've released that basically allows third-party developers to determine what kind of in-app content can be seen based on context. So not only is it like, okay, like right now, if I am in personal focus mode and I don't want to see my work email, I have to just basically not allow the email app to show up on my home screen when I'm in that mode.
Yeah.
But what this focus mode could do is, I use Spark Mail app. Potentially the developers of that app could say, hey, guess what? Your email work account just does not even appear visible to you in the mail app when you're in personal focus. And that is like so good. I'm hoping that that's implemented very widely.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
And last year, like the current shipping version with 15, if you wanted watch faces to be part of focus mode, you had to set up a personal automation for every single focus. Now it's just built into when you set up your focus, you get to choose your iPhone lock screen as well as the Apple Watch face. So it's much more kind of thought through with like doing that.
Exactly. So what I have now is, it's like when I go, I have a automation in the Shortcuts app that when I go into work focus, my watch face changes to the Siri watch face, which has like an easier to read time. Middle school classes end at like 9:57 a.m. Weird times that I'm not totally comfortable reading at a glance. Analog. So that's cool. But now like the new lock screen features that were announced allow you not only many aesthetic sort of customization features, sort of building off of the popularity of widgets on the home screen.
It's kind of like watch faces for your phone in a way.
Yes.
You're building out these kind of watch faces, but for the iPhone lock screen, because you're getting complications that are more in the style of Apple Watch complications rather than full-out widgets.
And right on the right on the lock screen, so you don't have to like swipe up and go to your home page to like see these widgets. These are like more discreet, more in the style of, if anyone's wearing an Apple Watch, it's that kind of smaller style, more discreet kind of aesthetic, and they'll go right on your home screen. And there's all sorts of new like kind of things that they're doing to allow you to make your home screen look awesome, as well as adding these custom widgets of glanceable, fast information. But then, as you're saying, the lock screens can be linked to a focus, and you can kind of like swipe through your lock screens from left to right, which will automatically change your focus.
And they're linked, so if you change your lock screen, it can automatically also change your focus if you set it up in that manner. And there's some pretty helpful ones, like just having the sunrise and like sunset as a little complication thing, or when your next alarm's going to go off, is kind of helpful information to make sure your alarm's set for the morning.
I can already tell you where I'm going to go with this. Like, I'm going to have a lock screen that's I'm going to basically, I've already kind of started tweaking my personal focus mode in preparation for this. My personal focus is basically just like my default mode that my phone is always in. So I kind of customize it to be let a fair amount of notifications through and have my 3 or 4 like home screens that I typically like to have. But what I'm thinking of doing is it's like, okay, well, if I made my work focus have its own lock screen that was basically just a picture of all the relevant calendars that I need, because I'm referencing at least like 40 times a day. I'm referencing like our school schedule because we have like 4 or 5 different schedules we move between. I could like make a
your space is fairly limited up there for what they can show. It's just the top portion. You can't like plaster your lock screen.
Well, what I mean is I'm gonna Photoshop a nice pretty design that has my school's calendar schedule worked into the design of the.
Oh, I see.
You know,
and then you could have like an automation update that or something.
Right. So like when I get to work, basically my lock screen will change from a picture of my kid to a picture of just our school's
schedule,
when the class times start and end for all grades at all times. And this is not even to speak to the potential complications I could add. I mean, I'm sure that I'll want to have my calendar event up next on my lock screen. I use Timery to track my times, just to see my currently running timer. Weather would be great. Like
I gotta say, the weather animated lock screen thing is wild. They basically took the weather app's background and made that as the lock screen image as well as the home screen image if you wanted to, with like rain falling or the sun, and it's great. And the animations are also awesome for some of the ones like where you see the Earth, the live view of the Earth, I think it is, and it'll like zoom out and do some crazy stuff. So it's some nice touches.
I'm wondering. I'm already thinking to myself because I kind of wish that they would let you put more of these lock screen widgets on. It looks like you can only get one row of them, which equates to about 4. There's like 2 sizes. There's a small one and then a slightly larger one. You can fit 4
Yeah,
small
one
ones.
row plus text complication at the very top.
Right, there's like a third little tiny one right above the time.
Right.
Yeah, so to me, I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, that's very limited. Making my lock screen background looking like the weather, does that save me a spot? Where I don't have to
Yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. I really like one of the things I have as like a typical iOS 14 style widget is I really like the Carrot Weather app because it shows if you use like the medium sized one, it shows the hourly forecast on the left and the daily forecast. So you're sort of seeing like a detailed and an at a glance forecast at once. But then if it's raining, then the hourly forecast turns into a rain intensity graph, which I like.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can even think like you could do the weather image, and then say you want to save the complication slot, you could have the widget on your home screen. So it's like, oh, what's this rain thing? And then you could pull up the widget just unlocking it.
Well, and they're launchers too, right? So like I'm already thinking to myself, maybe the Draft app, which is where I take really quick information down, maybe I just have a little widget that takes me straight into a new note.
Right. Yeah, that could be cool.
Yeah, I've already planned out some potential home screens, but I'm just excited about the idea. It's like, okay, like if the lock screen can be automated and customizable, then I'm going to want to use the focus modes to a greater extent than I already am.
Yeah. And you can now automate tab groups, so you could link a focus mode to creating a set of tabs when you walk in the morning. Have Safari open these 10 tabs that are fresh and ready to go.
Right, I have a Howard County Public School System tab group. That's like all my grade books open in tabs, all my Google Docs open in tabs that I access, like all sorts of county stuff, just to have that right in front of me, just from the fact that my phone senses I'm within proximity. Yeah, so I'm going to probably, it's interesting, I haven't really had the foresight, but I wonder if like a year from now, I'm going to be finding myself changing some apps that I use around to ones that better support. I mean, I'm looking at my dock of apps. I mean, most of these apps are made by the kinds of developers who keep up with these trends. So,
right.
OmniFocus Craft. Like I'm sure that, there will be a lot of work to support this. So, yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty good. Yeah. So that's open to third parties. There's also a new kind of notification, which is a live activity notification. So like one of the things I do all the time, especially this time of year where I'm like running out of steam, I'll order kava for my music team. I'll say, hey, did y'all pack lunch today? And we'll be like, no, our concert was last night. We just got to phone it in today. I'll order some kava for the team. Well, I get like 6 text messages. And again, I'm in work mode, so I don't even get the automated text messages reliably.
Right.
Well, what DoorDash could potentially do is have it looks more like a widget than it does a notification, but it basically could like just animate the progress of your vehicle delivering your food to you, or the progress of an Uber driver coming to pick you up, or a sports score, or insert whatever information an app wants to deliver you that's live and updating will just show up right on the lock screen.
No, I mean, that seems pretty great. So hopefully developers support it.
I already seen some screenshots from. I don't use the Readdle calendar app, but they've seen them post some screenshots of them like actually using the live activities for upcoming calendar or current calendar events.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know if that's what Apple has in mind. I don't know if they'll let that pass, but it seems
probably not. But that's cool.
Yeah, I'm all for developers being creative with the constraints they have. You know, if someone wants that, they
absolutely.
Yeah. Very cool. Someone should have. If someone wants it, they deserve to have it on there. You know, that's do what you want with your phone. I say.
So do you think the collaboration stuff will make any kind of mark on education as a thing? I mean, it sounds like, in any app that wants to support it, you could have, a drafts collaboration session if you want. If Greg Pierce wanted to compete with Google Docs, he could now do that.
So this is how I put this. I'm gonna answer that rather in a roundabout way. So my take is like last year, all of these pandemic features were sort of thrown into iOS 15. So like the idea of like streaming
SharePlay.
Yeah, SharePlay, like streaming a Disney Plus show between two different people who are Apple users, but it all had to be kind of initiated through FaceTime. And one of the things that was in last week's keynote was Apple has said, hey, we're sort of like taking a lot of those features and you can now sort of just integrate them into iMessage. So you can share a link with someone on a message, but then you don't actually have to be on a call to enjoy listening to music in sync with each other or watching a show in sync. And so what I think this sort of, I don't feel like Apple tied a nice pretty bow on this narrative, but what I kind of read into it was that a lot of the collaboration features announced last week are continuations of this SharePlay philosophy.
It's also like an API that pretty much any app can support. So last year was more about like video stuff and more like, as you said, audio, like more, I don't know, not the kind of apps that I wouldn't think that like drafts or like agenda could create collaboration in the way they can now.
It seems like, from what I could gather, because later we'll get to this later in the outline, they showed off some new collaboration features in iWork. And my music team, we do use Google Docs because the county is all in on it. But for things that either we publish or print or that we just need to access internally, we will often use the collaboration features in iCloud. And one of the people on my music team accesses it from the web, which is not even like really an optimal experience, but she doesn't seem to have any problem with it. So like we do our instrument inventory is in Numbers, our music library is in Numbers, we have rosters we do in Pages, because we print a lot of this stuff. So they showed some features in the keynote of like using iMessage as sort of like a way to track changes and like have dialogue that is sort of contextual to a file that a group of people might be working on or a project that people might be working on. Do you think that requires the app to be built on CloudKit, which is like the iCloud syncing?
I'm not sure. Yeah. And something I thought of, the sharing of Safari tab group, that could be interesting. And I don't know, would you do this with a classroom? Like here's, we're all looking at the same tabs and you can see where everyone else is doing. I don't know if that'd be a thing. That feature
sounds really dangerous. So my music team does have a shared Apple Notes folder, because we were sharing lots of notes with each other. We're trying to plan rosters for the next year, concert dates. So we eventually just decided, let's just you can make a folder in Apple Notes. A lot of people don't know this. You can make a folder that is a shared folder, and then just any note that's in that folder gets shared with everybody who's inside of that place. So it's really handy because, a lot of people will like share notes with me, but it's just a Google Doc. And I'm like, I don't.
And you have to share every single new Google Doc that you want shared.
Right, I don't want that. I want something simple and like mostly text focused and maybe images in line. So it's really handy because like Apple Notes will now support tagging. You can like it tracks change. It does like a change log. You can call someone out inside of the note if you need to get their attention on a change. Like it's really, really powerful. But you have to be careful because it's not always clear, especially on iPhone when you can't see like the folder hierarchy. It's not always clear when you create a new note which folder you're creating it within.
Right.
And last year I had to tell one of my colleagues, I was like, hey, that kitchen remodel you're doing seems really nice, but you should probably move your expenses out of our shared
I mean, it could have been a lot worse.
Well, that's what I'm thinking with
stuff people put in notes.
Think about, the internet, like all the things you can do on the
people
web.
Browsing tabs, like what's Jimmy doing on that page over there?
I don't know. I'm a little sketched out by the tab groups, but it definitely has potential. Like I can imagine using it with my wife if we were planning a trip somewhere, maybe like looking up some different locations on Google Maps. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, hey, actually, this is not related to iOS 16, but to 15. I, for the first time today, did my first FaceTime call with an Android user.
Oh, fun times.
Yeah, that was like that was one of their pandemic things. It was like, Zoom is eating their lunch. We got to at least make a FaceTime call. So you can now schedule a FaceTime call in a calendar or just text someone a link and then hop on. And it uses, if you're not on an Apple device, it uses the web. It was great. It was awesome. It felt exactly like a FaceTime call to me because it was using the app and his little square was...
Yeah, and you can manage people on the FaceTime call, approving people and kicking people out if you need to. And in 16, I discovered this the other day, is I was saying, I'm going to send you a FaceTime link, and on the smart quick type bar right above it, it had a little link icon and had like FaceTime invitation. If I clicked that, it generated a FaceTime link and just spat it in there without me going to FaceTime to create a new link, which was super cool.
Yeah, I've been noticing those changes too. They're like subtle, but they are very, very, they really just make the experience so much smoother.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of communication apps, Messages got some great stuff. You can now edit an iMessage. You can mark one as unread.
The big cheer in our family, because there's people that sometimes go through their Messages app in our household really quickly, and somehow they delete their messages. They do a swipe and hit, and it's gone, and they come to me asking, why is this deleted? It's like, because you hit delete. And now there's like a little 30-day trash can where you can recover stuff when you're being too quick.
That's good.
So that is great, because... Yeah,
I'm an archivist. I just let them all sit and take up space.
Oh, I do too. But sometimes, I don't know. Some people they accidentally delete stuff. I don't understand this because they're asked a confirmation and they're like, I don't know how this got deleted.
Yeah, well, marking unread is huge because like I am always reading a message because the badge bothers me, and then thinking to myself like, well, what do I do now? I either forget about it, which happens pretty regularly, or if I don't want to forget about it, I have to like take a screenshot of it and put it as the attachment in an OmniFocus to-do task.
Yeah, it's great, but I still wish they did the mail thing where it was like remind me in like an hour about this thing versus kind of jerry-rigging the red status.
Well, this is perhaps maybe like a too much of a power user request from a company like Apple, but I would really like them to. So like if you are looking at a mail message and you say to Siri, like, remind me about this later, like it'll put a direct link to that message inside of the task. I would love for Apple to just create an API or some sort of way basically where third parties and Apple apps can all just expose direct linking to their app content to the system.
Yeah.
And I don't have to like, connect all the dots myself. I think that would be great because it would be like I don't want to always do that with Siri. Sometimes I'm just looking at a thing and I'm actually using on the Mac. I'm using a great app called Hook, which is somehow they've just made it work with nearly every popular Apple app and then some under the sun. And like if you hit the keyboard shortcut, mine is Shift Command Spacebar. It doesn't. I can be in a Slack channel looking at an Apple Note. Looking at a particular document. If I have it selected in the Finder, it'll take me to it in the Finder. But if I have the document open, like say a Pages file, it'll like actually open Pages with that file. It just somehow can like link anything to anything, and I need that. I need that for iOS. Let's see. So SharePlay stuff and Messages. We talked about that. Okay, so like there's this whole app intent thing that is going to make it easier for developers to... I don't really have my head wrapped around this. What do you make of this?
Explain the feature first. What app intents? Explain more to that.
Yeah, like, do you my understanding is like if let's say, okay, so I use the podcasting app Overcast, and if I go into the settings, there's like a bunch of actions that it will donate.
Oh, you're talking about the shortcuts thing.
I'm talking about the shortcuts in API, yeah.
Okay, so the shortcuts thing. Basically, developers will now be able to, when you download your app, they'll be able to create like a one action customizable shortcut that shows up in your Shortcuts app. So if you've never used Shortcuts before and you open up Shortcuts, you'll see, oh, there's these 10 or 12 shortcuts that are already here for me that I can open up and see how they work and customize and add different actions to it. Kind of gets you started with the apps you already have is kind of the idea.
Okay.
Some starter shortcuts.
So like I have, like, to use Overcast as the example, like if I go into the settings, it'll say like click here to make play my favorite show a shortcut action. But so it's basically just taking that necessary step out of it. It's just it can donate those actions directly to the Shortcuts app upon installation.
I mean, what it's actually doing is it's creating a shortcut in your Shortcuts library where you have all your other created shortcuts. You're going to find some new ones there that the developer created for you to kind of get your brain spinning on what else you can do with
I wonder if the developer, I didn't read any of this. I have no reason to believe this is the case, but I wonder if someone could, because one of my issues with taking a really simple task and turning it into a Shortcuts action is that Shortcuts, in my experience, can already barely get it right if I say it in the exact way that the title of it, because you have to say, yo, Siri, and then insert name of, like, you have to say the name of the shortcut exactly, and sometimes it still doesn't get it for me. So I'm wondering,
I never use Siri though. I just hit the button.
Right, I know, but I'm wondering, like, could someone say, like, let's say that you have a podcast app, you want to create some shortcuts to play, like, so just something that like plays whatever was most recently playing thing. Like, are you with these app intents basically just putting the shortcut in there and that's it, and it functions as normal? Are you able to like have a couple of like smart key phrases that are associated with that action so that you can speak?
I'm not sure.
I'd be curious to know. Yeah. Because running shortcuts with my voice is great, but it definitely does not have that same kind of natural language conversational tone that, like I can tell my HomePod to close the blinds 20 different ways. But like I can only start playing the Overcast podcast app by saying exactly the words play podcasts in Overcast. Like, I can't say.
Yeah, you have to know the language.
You got to know it. All right. Well, I'm excited definitely about improvements to, let's see, there was like some review about like the wallet app. Like I know, some locks have come out. They just reiterated that now there are more locks coming out that you can use as your key to your house using the Apple Wallet app. I have 2 smart locks. Neither of them have this feature, but I definitely am thinking about it the second that one of my 2 locks.
I owned the August smart lock in the past, but we moved to a house that doesn't really use deadbolts as the way to lock. They're great. I have a bunch of smart lights. Our AC unit is like an on-off that we just turn on and off with an AC plug that's on a smart outlet. And yeah, I'm a fan of these things.
Some people ask me, like, if I can, because I have a little widget from actually already, like, because if you swipe to the right when you're on the lock screen, there's like a little area, the Today view, where you can put widgets, and I already have a widget that is the Home Plus app can like you can have some favorite accessories like kind of tappable on and off right from there, and I have my locks there. Someone asked me, like, why do you need an Apple Wallet smart lock card if you have that? And I'm like, no, you don't. You underestimate how many seconds
you could just tap your wrist.
Yeah,
you could tap your wrist to your door and it would open.
Right. Don't underestimate how many milliseconds I'm willing to shave off of my day doing mundane tasks. There's going to be like a contactless Apple Pay thing coming out. So for a while, I used to charge. One of the methods I would charge for my private studio was like I had one of those Square reader register things, and now that's just going to come straight baked into iOS. You can hold 2 iPhones.
I mean, there's no headphone jack anymore, so what else are they going to do?
Right, exactly. So it's like you can just touch, open the wallet app, touch 2 phones together, and you can pay someone your bit for lunch.
Not even that, but Square in their own app can now, I believe, accept NFC payments with this. I think it's like an API they can tap into. I might be wrong there.
There was like a slide with some business partners, and I'm pretty sure they were there because Square doesn't just offer the like pay me thing. Like it's its own service. Like I actually had for a while, my wife sells her art at she like takes her art to art shows sometimes and sells. So we were using it for my private studio and for her show. It's like the little register that the iPad snaps into.
Yeah.
And that thing is really great because it like manages like items and like prices and discounts and all sorts of, like, it's like a little mini cash register. So to be able to have those features, if that's kind of your ecosystem where you collect payment, but still be able to touch two phones without a piece of hardware. Very good. Let's see.
Excellent, yeah.
Multiple stopping in the Apple Maps app. I mean, I'm having a hard time. I'm not going to try to, in every case, connect this to the profession of music educators, but this is just,
you're going on a band road trip, of course.
Yeah, of course, right? Well, I'll tell you what. There have been more than one, gas. You got to get gas. I'm shocked that Apple Maps can't do this. I actually thought that this was already in the app.
So it can currently, select, gas stations and coffee places on the road, but now you'll be able to just, add anything and up to 15 of them and rearrange them, and it's much more built out. So
right.
It's very limited and frustrating in the past, and now it's great.
Yeah, totally. All right, I'm skipping around a little bit in my outline here. Family sharing of photos. This is gonna change the way. My son is 2.5, and I've never. I think the first 2 years of his life so far, I've taken just as many photos in my camera roll as I have the rest of my existence altogether.
Sure.
And so many times, it is nice now that you can send photos over iMessage, and it puts a little download button right next to the photos, so you can add them to your that definitely has helped my wife and I out a lot.
But then you're paying Apple twice for the same photos to be stored in different libraries.
Exactly. So family sharing looks like it's going to try to solve this issue. You can have a family album, which you already can have in the Apple Photos app, but it looks like what it's going to do is do some smarts to try to figure out. You can train it what kinds of if we detect you took a picture of certain people, or if your whole family is taking photos, it senses you're all in the same location away from home taking photos. It's going to do some smarts to try to gather those photos from those different contexts all into the family album, which will solve basically this problem of constantly sharing photos with your loved ones.
Yeah, it's a new library. It's a shared library versus sharing an album, which. A bit different, yeah.
It'll also the camera app has a little swipey bit that you can
it'll tell you where it's going.
Exactly. So you can choose where you're saving it. Is it the shared one or the personal? Right from within the camera app. Very good.
I mean, I'd love if they built on this and let us have multiple libraries, like a work library, and just go nuts with let me have on iPhoto. I believe you could have multiple libraries. You might have to do some tricks to make that happen, but I think you could have done that in the past.
Now you're actually running this software, right? What do you have betas installed on?
It's not in the beta. Not in the beta yet. I am running the 16 in beta on the iPad and iPhone, but the sharing stuff isn't in there yet.
Okay. I'm curious to know how that...
For a good reason, I'm sure. They don't want people messing up their photo libraries until that's finalized.
I understand totally. Yeah, I'm wondering the interface, because right now I spend most of my time in the Photos app looking at the All Photos tab, which is just show me everything in my camera roll.
Yep.
I'm wondering if there's a way to view everything in your camera roll and everything in the family album all in one, because that's what I would want.
Probably. I imagine there would be.
All right, well, that's going to be really super slick. I can't wait.
And I just hope there's a read-only ability for children.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I don't need them. Well, I don't have children that would
I don't want a 14-year-old going through and deleting stuff or putting some weird edits on stuff.
Right, yeah, they've got to tweak that for sure. Well, also not something super prominent in education, but there are updates to the Home app. There's going to be a brand new Home app. I am a smart home nerd. I'm so excited.
Sure. It's great. Everything is on one just scrolling list, and you can filter by device type. It's nice.
That's really the main thing I wanted.
You don't have to favorite every accessory you own, so it's easily accessible.
Yeah, I counted. I have over 80 home accessories in the Home app right now, and now that's
wild.
That's a misleading number because a lot of them are one accessory that displays itself 5 different ways to you. So I have
you have an outlet that has 3 outlets and you're only using one of them or something.
Sure, or a good one is I've had to actually do some hacking. I have a little box made by it's called a Hobes. I don't know how it's pronounced, but basically it plugs into your Ethernet and you run a little server on it that can trick certain products in your home to show up in the Apple Home app even if they're not licensed to. So we have a Dyson air purifier, and that is not really a category that the Apple Home app can register. So what it does is it shows it to you as it has an air filter in it, so it shows it to you as an air filter. It shows it to you as a thermostat where you can control the temperature. It shows it to you as a fan, where you can control the fan speed. It shows it to you as a switch, because you can toggle on and off the oscillator in the night mode. So it's like it shows up as like 7 or 8 accessories. It's just like one little thing. But I'm
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just kind of, I'm excited about that. I think that I would, for most people, still not suggest going as far into the home stuff as I have, mostly because this new Matter alliance between Google, Amazon, and Apple is going to hopefully make a wider variety of accessories work with a wider variety of smart home ecosystems.
So one day Nest thermostats could one day be in your Apple home.
Right. Well, that's the idea, right? And mine actually are, because again,
it is. Yeah, it totally is the idea. Yeah,
because
I think they're on board for it.
I bought actually. There's a company called Starling.io who makes a little. Again, I have like a million of these hubs. They make a little hub. You plug it into your Ethernet, and it takes all of your Nest products and shows them in the Apple Home app.
Oh, it's wonderful.
It's really nice. It was like, I don't know, $60 or something, which is, I've got all of our doorbell cameras are Nest. So,
yeah. I have tried the live captions feature in FaceTime and for a podcast the other day just to test it out at the beginning, and it worked remarkably well. There was a just slight delay, and you'd see the text and a nice big, kind of like a floating window, a nice big window you could blow up and look at, and that was super cool. And I was using it work system wide as well. You could do it for like a YouTube video you're watching. It'll like kind of like download the YouTube video and like scan it in advance to give you the text.
Yeah, interesting.
I want to know if there's a way to. I wonder if there's a way to export that text in any way. I need to play around with that.
Because the idea is like in Photos, in the last operating system update, you can like select text from within a photo. Here's what I don't understand about live text.
No, so this is the captions, live captions. Sorry, if I misspoke.
This is where it just basically, no matter whether or not
it's on audio.
Yeah, so if the app, whether or not the app supports captions, it'll just basically whatever's coming out of your phone speaker, it will add captions.
Yeah, it could even be you could have the sound off, completely muted, speaker wise, and you'll still be able to see what they're saying.
Oh, so I could be on a FaceTime call and not be bothering anyone with that side of the call.
I mean. Yes. Yeah, that would be a scenario. If you don't have headphones, you could mute the other person, and your family members would only hear you talking.
Interesting.
Or you could do sign language if they know the other person. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, so you had mentioned live text. I'm thinking of the other feature, though. You made me think of it.
I mentioned live captions. Live text is like better this year as well. There's like currency conversion. So if you're going to Europe with your band, trip or whatever, you can see what the prices actually are, and it does it in videos now, which is cool. So you can pause the video and select text out of the video. This could be cool for and credits of movies. You can just tap on a name and see who's in it.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, CarPlay had some announcements. We're looking at maybe one of these days going electric, and it's interesting. I have a neighbor who has a Tesla, and that's not really the direction that I want to go, but it's interesting how I've sat in it, and it's interesting how as much as I really like CarPlay, they have resolved a lot of the things that CarPlay can do in their own way. And I think that the overall software experience is still pretty far ahead of most of the rest of the auto industry. But this CarPlay announcement is basically saying, okay, now the iPhone is not just taking over a little square screen; it can take over the entire operating system of the car. It can stick stuff behind in the dash, behind the steering wheel. It can support
tell you when you're running out of gas.
Right. It can control your windows, your heating and stuff, your seats. It can accommodate multiple different sizes of displays depending on what your car has. It looks really, really nice.
And I wonder if the car manufacturer will give Apple any data after you're done driving, so Apple could have a little car app on your iPhone that give you scores and here's how to improve. So I think what was one of the companies, was it Automatic, that had the little thing where it would rate you based on your braking speed. I liked
that. We had one of those. I liked that. That thing would connect. You could automate that thing and have it count your miles, and
so I'm curious if they'll be able to do more with that now that they're at least reading this data. I'm not sure if they'll have access to do more with it
It for a moment
Yeah.
it made me pause to think like, do I want to reprioritize CarPlay in our next car? And then I realized that like announcements, well, it said on
Yeah,
the slide.
this will be in your 2025 car.
Yeah, right. And I'm not waiting that long to replace my wife's 12, 13-year-old car. So that's
Yeah, CarPlay is great as is, but this is I was blown away with what they demonstrated. This is like customize your own dash to be how the data that you need most relevant to you.
right.
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, well, I'm skipping around in my outline here. I got to tell you, I'm fairly uninterested in the new WatchOS update, so I don't have much to say about it.
Okay.
I think, I do.
I mean, the running stuff's wild.
It's cool.
but-
Well, if you're a runner, definitely. Why don't you talk about that? Since I know you run. So
Yeah, so big part of improving on running is some of the different metrics they were showing off. So like the amount of time your foot is on the ground and like how high up you're getting, like the vertical height you're getting, vertical oscillation. That stuff is going to be a new metric. They're doing some fancy stuff to capture that. I do, or I don't run that much these days, but when I was big in the barefoot running. So time on ground is very important, and being very quick cadence. They're doing like run cadence and stuff. All that stuff is very good data to be improving upon. And there's also doing a thing where if you run the same path every day, you can kind of race yourself. There'll be a little ghost. It'll tell you your old self, your ghost is ahead of you. And it'll kind of give you some fun gamification also of your run.
that's cool. Yeah, I do. I don't run as much because of joint issues. I run occasionally. I'm sure I will enjoy those features. I did actually. So I do use the sleep tracking, which is going to tell you more detailed analysis now about
The stages, which
right.
I've listened to a lot of different like health podcasts and the whole stage thing, and no other company has managed to, with the risk data, be able to give accurate stages. Like it's just not there. So I'm curious if Apple's scientists are somehow doing stuff that other companies are only kind of like giving you a good guesstimate about. So that's my curiosity with that one.
I've been using a cool app called Napbot, which will analyze the Apple Watch sleep data and tell you things about like your heart rate improvement over time, your respiratory rate over time, your deep versus it's pretty.
Yeah.
It's a nice little companion, but to get more of that straight from the sleep app itself would be cool.
Yeah, and they're doing things like AFib, not like in the past is like you have AFib right now, and now it's like you're trending towards AFib. Yeah, watch out on these different things. I don't fully understand how they're doing what they're doing with that, but it seems like a big deal.
Right.
For heart health.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing with the Apple Watch health improvements is that they are just not for me, but what they are is actually very, very impressive. They're just not like things that I'm going to take advantage of because I don't,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Don't currently have it.
I was going to say also the heart rate zones. I totally forgot to mention. This is a
Right.
huge one for training, being in the right heart rate zone. You don't want to be too high. If you're like training for a marathon, you want to be in a level where you can be running for 26 miles without, getting tired and exhausted. You may have different sessions where I want to be in the zone 5, and it'll automatically set your zones based on your historical heart rate data in workouts. So you don't need to like figure out what is the appropriate zone for me and my fitness level. It'll automatically adjust that for you. And that's a really awesome new ability. And also, if you're a swimmer, it'll recognize if you're just on a kickboard as a stroke type. So that's pretty cool. And then also triathlon people, it'll just detect if you're doing a triathlon, you're biking now, you're swimming now, you're running now. It'll automatically switch between those workout types on the go. And I think you could do like a rotation of like those 3 sports back to back to back to back. It'll just automatically switch as you change, which is cool.
Yeah, that is really nice. Well, there's going to be a new medications app too, and that's something I just actually on my wrist got a notification telling me that I sometime later tonight need to take some medication, but it's not a dedicated. I actually used to use a dedicated. There's a really good one on the App Store that integrates because in the Apple Health app, you can actually link your healthcare provider accounts to it, and so when I go to anything associated with Johns Hopkins, I when they take my height and my blood pressure and stuff, that stuff just gets fed straight into data like spreadsheets and graphs, very legible stuff accessible to me right from within the app. Well, if you get prescribed medication from a medical professional, then third-party pill apps can look at that and kind of pull it in to their apps, and then you can set up some parameters about like when do I need to be reminded. But I just like that Apple is handling this themselves, because I think that they're going to be able to make the experience a little nicer. And then I imagine it will integrate with that same health data, since it's already in Apple Health, and it'll do things like tell you like, hey, are these two medications going to like work at the same time? Like, are there going to be any side effects? It's
should you have alcohol while you're having this?
Right, exactly. So I'm kind of into that. I'll definitely use that.
And you can put vitamins and stuff in there as well. If you don't need medicine, you could do other supplements and stuff in there as well. It can scan bottles for you to like look it up if you're having trouble finding it.
I just need it to have a very persistent notification scheme, because that's the reason I moved away from my really nice medication app to Do, is because the Do app will just keep pinging my wrist until I click the done button.
And family setup is much better. So if you have a kid that they don't have an iPhone, they just have the watch. In the past, they would not have access to listen to any podcast or have access to the home app, so they couldn't turn on the lights or unlock the door. Those things are both coming, so that's pretty great, because I can't imagine giving my kid just a watch and no ability to listen to a podcast. I mean, what kind of torture is that?
Right. Yeah.
Or even unlock the door when they get home. That seems like a no-brainer, so that's pretty great.
Yeah, totally. All right, the next section of the keynote was the Mac. I kind of want to use, I don't really want to talk that much about this MacBook Air, but I want to use this section to sort of get on a soapbox, because Howard County Public Schools just transitioned all of our teachers away from the like old MacBook Airs to these new Dells. And I am getting more than the regular amount of questions from my colleagues about like, what Mac should I buy? Now I get why that our district did this. Like, so much of our software is on the web, like Microsoft Outlook email on the web, Google Docs on the web, our entire learning management software, Canvas, on the web. Like, if you're only using web apps, then your web browser is the operating system, not whatever's installed directly on the computer. So I get it, but what I think that, and I actually understand that from a financial perspective, but what I think that Howard County miscalculated is how much people are comfortable with some of those OS level details. Like, a lot of people, my colleagues, are really not doing the cloud thing. Like, they might have a lot of their more recent work in Google Docs, but they still, like, for miscellaneous PDFs and audio files and videos, like, they're still interacting with the Finder, and that experience is not something that they want to leave. So I've got a lot of colleagues asking, what Mac should I buy? And this is always a hard question for me to answer, because I'm like so much more steeped in software. Like, I take for granted like that the hardware is a big part of the equation. I'm just, we're doing this whole episode on new software, but like, I've really taken some time to think about this, because like, Apple is like, I feel like it's actually a really good time to recommend someone buys a Mac, because this M1 MacBook Air,
that's the one to get, the $999.
That's
MacBook
what I tell
Air.
people. Is I tell everyone, I'm like, listen, if you want something shiny and new and sexy, get the brand new M2 MacBook Air that was announced last Monday, period. But if you're like most teachers I know and you're like a little bit cost conscious, you can now get the M1 MacBook Air for under $1,000. That's like, when is Apple?
What was it? Is that a discount? I think that's the same exact price.
Well, and also definitely if you're a teacher, use the education store on Apple, because
for $899.
Then it'll be even cheaper than that. $899 for an M1 MacBook Air. Like, the M1 chip has, I'm using the M1 chip in my MacBook Pro, which is what I'm using to talk to you right now, and that's obviously like a more powerful version of the same chip, but like, and just to kind of speak to its power, like on this M1 MacBook Pro, I am usually running like no less than 15 apps at a time, 20 different utilities running up in the menu bar. Sometimes I've got like multiple creative professional apps doing like batch processing stuff at once. And I have not to this day, I've had this computer since October. I have not heard, I don't know what the fan sounds like. The fan has never come on.
There's no fan.
In the M1 MacBook Pro, there is a fan.
Oh, I thought you had the Air. Sorry.
Yeah. So a lot of teachers will say, like, should I get a lot of questions about, should I get the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar? That is the only one I say do not buy. I say I don't.
Yeah, don't get that. Either get the M2 or the M1 Air.
If you're going to need more power than an M series,
then get the 14-inch.
Right, then get the new MacBook Pro. And I know, and the question is hard to answer. A lot of teachers are like, do I really need the power? I feel like
probably not.
Right, that's what I say. Is like, I am like this MacBook Pro is able to turn on the fan and like really like tax these processors, and I've never heard it happen in very, very extreme situations. So I tell most people you can do no worse than this M1 MacBook Air, and now it's under $1,000. So that's my MacBook. I said it. Now I can just point people to this episode whenever I get asked this.
Yeah. And the M2 it's a better computer. It's I don't know. It's got a MagSafe charger. There's some nice added benefits, but the M1's really solid still.
Yeah. It's really good. So Mac OS got some announcements. Let's see. Let's talk about Stage Manager and the iPad last. So let me just run through some quick bits here. Mail. Apple.
I mean, so much stuff is cross-platform. So like Mail across the board is just so much better with search, which I got yelled at constantly in this household for not finding emails, and now I will be able to, which is great. So.
Yeah, I use Apple Mail. So here's what would really get me to switch to Apple Mail. So last year, iOS 15, they Mac OS 12. I forget what was the last Mac OS, but they announced
12.
12. Thank you. They announced. If I use Apple Mail, my current choice is Spark Mail because it has all the stuff that now Apple Mail is going to get, like snoozing messages, reminding you if somebody doesn't reply, send later, like all of this stuff would make Apple Mail a candidate for me again. The challenge for me, though, is like, first of all, Spark Mail has a couple of real nice things I like. Like it's got custom swipe gestures, so I can swipe right to send something to my to-do list, swipe left to save it to my notes. I do like that stuff. But there's also, I've always used Mail app plugins, which I buy from third parties. Apple created like a way for these third parties to, like they created a plugin architecture last year that I don't think a whole lot of people, if any, are using. And if one of my favorite Apple Mail plugins is made by a company called Small Cubed, it's called Mail Tags, and they have another one called Mail Act Upon, which adds lots of automation to the Mail app. If Apple could get more people to be writing plugins using that new system and then bring it to iOS, I'll come back to Apple Mail. But I don't know. I know that the Spark Mail team also has been working hard on like some things I've wanted for a while, like Devon Think integration, and I'm sure they've got all sorts of other stuff up their sleeve. So it's my only issue with Spark Mail is you can't drag a message out of it and drop it somewhere else.
That's super nice in Apple Mail.
Yeah, and I do miss that, but there are ways around it. All right.
Yeah. Oh, Mac is getting a clock app in the weather app, so that's lovely. Actually, so a couple of these. Wow, the couple of these things are actually, I think, genuinely nice. Like handoff FaceTime. So like if I'm on my FaceTime on my phone and I sit down at my computer, it's great.
Hand it off to my Mac, continue the call from there. You can now take your phone. Belkin's gonna make a little dock, and you can stick your iPhone on top of your MacBook, attach it, and then automatically your FaceTime call will switch to the really fancy back camera of your phone. And wow, they demoed this thing where, because it's got this like ultra wide lens, where you could like actually, I can imagine teachers using this for virtual scenarios, where the iPhone, when docked on top of your computer, will create two images from the same lens, one that is a head-on of your face, and then another that can actually show what's happening on your desk, and then simultaneously show that in the FaceTime call. And they're going to open it up to Zoom and Microsoft Teams as well. I know teachers,
because that feature it's in its own like app thing, Desk View, and I think there's also an API for it. Seems pretty cool if they can nail it. It's I guess a little rough in the betas for that one. The continuity camera thing seems super cool, and I wish the iPad had this ability so I could have my iPhone and not only just snap it to the top of my iPad. I'd love to have my iPhone just like as a handheld device. I can show stuff in FaceTime. That would be neat.
This feature would have killed it in the online learning last year. It would have killed it.
Oh, it would have been great. Yeah.
So
the handoff thing is really cool. I noticed it last night when I was on a FaceTime call. I noticed on my iPhone, the call I was doing was on my iPad, and I noticed my iPhone in the top left corner. There's a little FaceTime icon. I clicked it. It's like, would you like the handoff? It's like, no, I'm good. But yeah, it just shows up there. It wasn't super annoying about it. It was just like a little icon you can press. But that camera thing, it's like, I was laughing so hard because it's like, Apple's like, oh, they've been making fun of us for all our crappy, cameras and Macs, and Well, just stick your iPhone there. It'll be fine.
Everybody I know bought one of these I have it on my desk. One of these Logitech 1080p cameras and a little ring light. And I mean, and the thing too is that the iPhone camera can do like image processing through software, so it can like imitate that same effect as a ring light through portrait mode. And
and they'll have center stage support as well, which is neat.
Right.
It'll probably be the best looking center stage camera, since I think that the camera on the iPhone back camera is going to be so much better than anything from the front facing cameras out there.
Yeah. It looks great. It was one of the great demos of the whole keynote, I thought.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
All right, can we talk iPad?
Let's do it.
All right,
It's a fun year.
Let's set the stage for this discussion. Did you see what I did there?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So I
did.
So earlier in the year, there's this blog post, which I will link in the show notes, that is by Jason Snell, who writes over at Six Colors. And it's like this report card for Apple. Like, he gets a bunch of people who think about Apple deeply to submit some thoughts and sort of give an arbitrary grade to Apple on each category, like the iPhone as a category, the iPad, services, so on and so on. And I read a couple of thoughts in the iPad section of this that really resonated with me. It was one of those things where it's like you're reading someone's words and it's almost like they're taking the words right out of your mouth and articulating it in the perfect way. And it really, like, some of the thoughts that were shared in this year's annual report card really summarized my experience with teaching online. Because before the pandemic kind of like made everyone go home, I was like really trying to be an iPad power user, to get everything that my devices could do consistent across macOS, the iPad, and just have every screen in my life be a window into the same experience. Yeah. And I was doing this with shortcuts and lots of other iPad automations. But then once I was sitting at a desk to teach 100% of the time, the Mac became like kind of the obvious choice for me. And then I got really back into customizing the Mac, and it's capable of so much more by comparison that the iPad sort of returned to kind of being this accessory. And you know, it's interesting because even Apple's keynote last year, not the one from last Monday, the narrative of it seemed to be embracing this attitude of like, we're going to let the iPad be the iPad and the Mac be the Mac. And I'm like, well, maybe I should just let my iPad be the iPad then and the Mac be the Mac. I know that this is sort of...
And your main stopping point from using the Mac as a teacher was you want more than 13 inches and you want more than one display to kind of spread out your work. You want like Zoom. So you want Zoom on the iPad screen with all your like other apps on a bigger screen where you can be like referencing what you're teaching and
it has
stuff like that. Is that accurate?
Certainly that's part of it, but it also has to do with like the flexibility of software and like how much I can tweak and hack the Mac, and like utilities that I can, like one of my most dependent on utilities that just makes me like 10% faster, if not 100% faster on my Mac, is called Alfred, which is a little, you know, it's just a little, it replaces the Spotlight feature, but it is actionable. So you can install plugins, and I can, you know, I can press Command Spacebar and then type in, you know, define this word or search for this person's contact card, or, you know, and that is, makes me so fast. And by comparison, the iPad doesn't have those kinds of tweaks, but also even the basic Apple versions of those features, like the Spotlight on the iPad, is painfully slow and unreliable in my experience. So I don't know. I've kind of returned this. I know that this attitude is, when I saw people like David Sparks and other like iPad enthusiasts kind of embracing this similar idea.
Well, I think part of it was the Mac M1. They finally got not crappy Macs. The Mac has been crappy for so long. It's like, oh, we have good hardware now. Let's be excited about this now.
Right. So it's like the Mac is getting super good, and everyone's working at home online, and Apple is even sort of confirming that the iPad and Mac OS are not coming together in quite the way that I think some people would like them to. They're coming together, but in a way that lets them each sort of continue to exercise their strengths. So anyway, this is a long way of saying that the iPad has a new role in my life this year. I know this is a little bit antithetical to the iPad Pro's worldview, so I want to get your take on this.
This is hearsay.
You're like,
but Apple's really shifted the tone, I think, this keynote with what the future of the iPad can be.
Right. So there's a feature in particular I want to talk about called Stage Manager, which allows the windowing of apps on iPad.
Yes,
and
overlapping windows.
Like a Mac. And it is, though, this is what I'm weirded out by, because this feature is on the Mac too. It is a mode that you go into. It's not like a default.
It's a mode for M1 iPads.
Which means I'm gonna have to buy a new one if I want to use it, even though I have a very, very fast 2018 iPad Pro.
Yes, not enough RAM, evidently.
So how do you describe this to someone who's familiar with the basic idea of an iPad having a single window on screen at a time, but also maybe who has tried to do the previous model of multitasking where you can kind of do two apps side by side, maybe even drag a little window over from the left or the right.
Right. So it's a mode you enter in Control Center. You enable this mode, and if you enable that, if you're in a split screen instance, those apps will become windows on your screen that you can resize to really small or really big. You could even have a window that takes up the entire screen and another window behind it, also full screen. And you may ask, why would you ever want to do this? Well, if you're using an app that freaks out when you close it, you can now have an app I don't know. My example is PS Remote Play. My PlayStation freaks out if I ever leave or HBO Max does this too. If I ever leave that app, it just freaks out. What are you doing? It closes out of that connection to the PlayStation. Now it'll still be running it'll be pretending it's foreground in all instances. But you can have up to 4 windows on your iPad screen of different sizes. Right now, I've got 4 vertical slabs all lined up next to each other, and it's kind of a nice little dashboard. And one really cool thing, I was editing a podcast, and I was able to do something I couldn't do before. I had Fairlight as a long, just horizontal app that took up the bottom half of the screen, and the top half, I had Twitter, so I could scroll Twitter, which was in the background, and you can scroll stuff that is in the background, not a foreground app, and your keyboard is still controlling Fairlight, which is in the foreground, which is pretty awesome. That you can, just like a Mac, you can be interacting with stuff that isn't even the main app at the time.
That's a killer Mac workflow that I actually didn't even think about, that would be a Stage Manager benefit, is because I'm doing it all the time. I'm typing into a PDF and I'm referencing another document to the left, but I can scroll through that other document while typing into the PDF. Yeah,
right.
That's really cool. So here's my concerns about this. The mode, going into a mode for it is a little weird to me. Do the windows have total flexibility with where you drag them and how big they are, or do they snap?
They do some snapping, and they'll magnetize sometimes. If you only have 2 windows on the screen, they'll kind of magnetize toward each other until you put another window in there. You can make them square, rectangle, narrow, where it's you can do a lot of different sizes, but not 1,000% flexible like the Mac. And then something you also have are different stages. So you have different sets of windows. So you have up to 4 windows, and on the left you can pull up a different stage. So you can have your messaging center where you have Slack and Messages and Skype, and then you have those arranged how you want, and you click over to a different set. So you can kind of have spaces set up with your most recent instances. I haven't done a whole lot of that quite yet, and the beta, it needs some work as far as you will be able to drag windows across from your iPad screen to an external monitor, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. But you can also drag windows from one stage to another through that UI on the left. I have mine selected to be hidden as well as the dock, which you can do that as well. So you can hide the dock in the Stage Manager UI, so you have more screen space to deal with. And yeah, it allows for some just very different setups that we could not have even imagined before this.
I'm gonna kind of wait and see what it feels like. This is the funny thing is I really want to test this summer, but if it's not gonna be on a non, I'm not that compelled to put a beta on my iPad this summer if I can't test that feature. So
yeah, it's fun. I would put the beta on your iPad if you had an M1, but otherwise,
And
it's iOS 16.
If I'm like gonna maybe upgrade, because 4 years is pretty good for a life of an iPad, at least in my past history. But this 2018 one is still killing it. So am I gonna? If I even wanted to buy a new iPad, I feel like I should wait at least until the next go round. So this might not be a feature
I'd say so.
That I get
wait
to
till
use.
the fall. M2 Pros probably.
Yeah.
And then we're mentioning about it being a mode, and I think this is really smart because sometimes I want to be in this mode where I'm more finicky and sort of Mac-like, where I have all these windows and I'm kind of like doing a bunch of stuff. But at night, sometimes I just want to turn on the old mode and go in the split screen, and it's just a different way of working. Like I'm good with that way of working, but it enables different kind of setups that are not of it. Like it's a different way of working. So like on the Mac, you have different windowing options. Imagine the Mac where you use their silly full screen mode, which doesn't feel at all right on the Mac, but you could work that way. And it's just a different way of working, and both have their merits, I think, and for different people in different situations, different apps, you'll want to gravitate towards one or the other depending on what work you're actually getting done.
All right, so here's my devil's advocate here about being in a mode. This past, like in iOS 15, which came out in the fall, a lot of improvements to the existing multitasking model were made. Like a lot of keyboard shortcuts were added. There have been some visual indicators on the screen that kind of show like which is the active window, or like, or even just imply in the first place to a new user.
So they like polished and made that split screen original vision kind of like here's a final version of what this can be, and it's more touch friendly and stuff like that.
Right, and I think that the multitasking where you like grab the app icons and sort of like place them where you want the app to go, I think that is a fundamentally flawed model. But the muscle memory is just so sticky that I don't use any of those new things introduced last year. Like I never click the little window manager button at the top of the screen. I never use the keyboard shortcuts. I just don't do it, and
because you know the old way.
I know the old way.
And the new way is more, I think, the way they introduced last year, I think, is more discoverable for people that just didn't know it was there.
It's not like really that different, though, in terms of like what you can do. So maybe that's what will be different about Stage Manager, but I just am trying to
This is different. You have new abilities. You can set up you can set up the screens to do different things than you could in the past. And you get 4 active windows that are doing stuff, and actually 8 active apps, because the external monitor is where this, I think, really, truly makes this a phenomenal upgrade, where right now I have you on FaceTime on my iPad screen, and then on my external monitor I got 4 apps in this nice, big, giant, external display, and it feels like having a Mac right next to an iPad, and you can even have, iPad mode turned on the iPad, where it's the old split screen way, and you can just touch over and do what you want to do. And then your other display, it's in the the Mac mode, if you want to call it that, the Stage Manager mode, and it really opens up some really awesome abilities of just being able to like spread your work across more screen real estate.
Right, yeah. Well, okay, you got me. You're the one who's using it, so you got me motivated to give it some hope and be excited when I eventually get my hands on it.
And then the other things display-wise is they have display scaling for iPads now, where you can say more space mode, and my 12.9-inch iPad now, by the old math, is showing me display content that would only show up on like a 15-inch iPad. They're making it more dense, where sidebars, you don't need to scroll as much. Certain web pages now are functioning for the first time because it's actually in a small enough resolution where you'll see everything.
Now, how do you change that? Because I didn't catch that from the keynote.
It's just in the settings app, the display area.
I can't fit more app icons onto my home screen, though, can I?
I don't use app icons anymore, so I'm not sure. I use widgets, and I use the app library. I don't believe so. But you can definitely display a lot more content, and I was like opening up Dorico, and those sidebars, they can put a lot more stuff in there if they wanted to now. And then there's the reference mode where you can put your XDR iPad Pro into like a color accuracy mode, where like color graders and people that are working on photography can have a reference monitor with their iPad now, which is pretty cool.
Right. Okay.
So doing a lot of display stuff this year. It's like all about displays, and the external monitor thing is just it's so big because like before I could never do a video chat for a podcast because if you on the old system, if you tried to even like use a slide over app with any video chat app, it would just like turn off your camera. And now you can just have an external display and have 4 apps up, and you can be working on that. We'll have your iPad dedicated to that, or you even use Stage Manager on your iPad to have a video call while also doing other windows, and the camera still is functioning. It's doing stuff like a computer should do. And beyond that, you can also have picture-in-picture and quick note windows up. So you can have up to 10 windows up on your iPad. So you can kind of put a lot of stuff up there and do things that Macs could only do in the past. And in the picture-in-picture window, it's got like a special privilege like you would expect on the Mac, where it's always the frontmost window. So if you're watching a video, I'm still finding that really a beneficial thing to use versus just a floating window that's just a standard window type.
Okay. Well, I knew you were going to bring some optimism to this conversation, so it's
an exciting day for iPad. The iPad is, I think it's graduated to computer. It's a tablet that can convert into a full-out computer, and it's fun being able to just like you can plug over USB-C or Thunderbolt to Mac setups, and like I can go upstairs to my family members' Mac setup and just plug in, and I can use they have a Bluetooth dongle that's plugged into this HDMI adapter thing. And I can just use that keyboard and mouse that's set up with that workstation, just kind of like be off and running.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the word that Apple used does actually, I think that we can maybe combine these narratives together, because it's, on the one hand, yes, I have found a new context for the iPad in my life, but I think that Apple has moved from, if I could like read between the lines, it seemed like last year they were saying iPad is iPad, the Mac is the Mac, they have unique strengths. But what I am seeing this year is both a continuation of making the Mac take good stuff from the iPad. The iPad is taking good stuff from the Mac. But the word they used for the iPad in this case was modular. So I think what they're saying is like, no, the iPad is not the Mac. However, we recognize that some people use it more in a laptop style. So we're going to continue to make it stronger in that context, as well as good at what it can be if you're just holding it in your hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I have it in the Hoverbar Duo, so it's floating at the same kind of height as an external monitor next to me. So it kind of looks like universal controls up on a Mac with the iPad next to it. It's kind of how it looks to me. And it can be modular. You can throw it in the laptop configuration or pure tablet mode, and it's just the iPad's all about flexibility, and this update just makes it all the pieces are falling into place, and the center stage, everything's the stage now. Stage Manager, I think the reason it's going to be great in the Mac is if you're an iPad user, you can kind of have that shared knowledge base to kind of like go back and forth between the two in a kind of a seamless way. And it was interesting during the interviews, they were talking about the creation of this. People on the Mac team were looking for what Stage Manager is, and people on the iPad team were also looking for this kind of solution. They kind of met in the middle is kind of how they arrived at this.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
2 different teams working on it, yeah.
It's the only, and I'll leave, this is not to maybe leave the topic with any sense of bitterness. I'm always excited the iPad can do more. The more similar that the Mac and the iPad are, the more I'm asking myself, but why can't my Mac just have Apple Pencil support? But why can't my iPad, but why not 5 windows on screen? Like if, you know what I mean? It's a weird, we're in a weird phase. I'm in that weird camp of people who just thinks they should throw Mac OS on it when it's docked to a...
Oh, hell no. Man, that would ruin it. What are you doing to me? Oh, God. Bunch of non-touch targets I got to deal with.
I know, and I know it's not going to happen. But, I am also cool with...
But this is version 1 too, so it's going to evolve, and maybe in a couple of years we do get 6 or 8 windows on the iPad screen, and as they get larger form factor iPads, maybe there's more capabilities with what they decide is appropriate for. Yeah, so I think it's like this is like they're building this platform from like from scratch. Like they're building versus the Mac has all this legacy and like expected things that you of course can do with it. So they're like, this is a modern take on what a computer can be, and they're kind of building that slower than I think we all would like.
Right. Well, but as it should be. I don't think they need to necessarily be the Mac. I just wish that there were some ways that, cause like for example, like another thing that was mentioned in the keynote is like a lot of new tools for developers to make their apps more Mac-like. So like a customizable toolbar. For anyone who doesn't know this, if in almost any Mac app, you right-click the top area of the app and you can customize which little clickable buttons show up there. Make a little shortcut for your favorite feature. And the iPad is going to get that, which I've wanted forever. And so that's cool. And so like those little tiny improvements here and there slowly and surely do make it the computer that I want it to be. But there are other fundamental things that I've talked about this on the show before that Apple would need to do.
Oh, there's also Driver Kit, which they're adding.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
So like Epson could make a scanning driver, and you could plug that directly in over USB and have a scanner work on your iPad. So
I was thinking audio interfaces. Like, what if M Audio can now like make the appropriate tools for your iPad to be able to, because like you can't do multiple channel audio ins and outs with iOS, but if you've got an audio interface plugged in and that's got multiple ins and outs, you can kind of, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, so that I'm curious to see what people do with that, because that could be huge if it's taken advantage of. And then I just want to mention like the multiple window thing. It's kind of like big because even like in the past, like say I wanted to in the past, like things would just mirror to the external display. So even apps that were like responsive, like the example I use is the PlayStation Remote Play app. If I mirrored that to a big screen, it would be a 4:3 instance of my PlayStation. Now, when I put that on the external, it's 16:9 like it should be for a game. And like Dorico, which is fully window size, it's a split screen app. So any split screen app can be resized to match the full external. So you can have a big old Dorico window there, taking full advantage of that screen. And then on your iPad screen next to it, you could maybe have the source score for like an arrangement you're doing. So you can be like referencing a musical piece next to you as you're like looking at your other, like it opens up a lot of new potential for workflows that you can do.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Okay. I'm excited to try it. I don't know when I will be able to, but I'm definitely putting that beta on my phone as soon as I can and making myself some sweet little lock screens. Great. Yeah. All right. Well, should we do some closing segments? Do we want to do the
Sure.
tip? All right. Do you want to do a tech tip or app or music of the week first?
Let's do music of the week.
We've been listening to the Anderson .Paak record Malibu around the house lately, and it's it's a good one. Somehow our 2.5-year-old son is just completely transfixed with this record and wants to listen to it all the time. So we had to find the clean version of it because it is not that. But there are some songs on there, that he would just request over and over and over again. And I don't know. I feel like most people know him from like the recent Bruno Mars duo Silk Sonic. His career around the time that Malibu came out, his career started to really take off. He was kind of like this small independent artist, and then he's just sort of taken off. So I figured he's a household name now. But that record, you'd think the amount of times we've listened to it, I wouldn't think I'd be up for having my 2-year-old ruin it for me. But no, we're still feeling it. Every single listen is a good listen. So that's gonna have to be mine, especially because it's like sharing. I'm getting to share musical experiences with my son now too, and he's sort of like it's a journey. Like I don't know what he's gonna resonate with and why. So when he likes something and I also like that something, and it's not the wheels on the bus, then we're in a good place.
Totally. So my music. What do we call this segment? Sorry.
Well, it used to be it used to be album of the week, and then people would mention like concerts they had been to or playlists or just an artist. So I've changed this to music of the week, something musical in your life you'd like to highlight.
Okay, so 2 albums that came in recently. I've got a world premiere recording of a Kickstarter I backed of Jerry Goldsmith's Black Patch and The Man. These are 2 soundtracks that were lost to time. They were like one of his earlier scores he wrote, and they were recently kickstarted and backed, and the Royal Scottish National Orchestra recorded fresh recordings that sound amazing. And I believe is this Entrada? Let me look at who actually did this here. I believe it's Entrada. Let's see. Yes, Entrada. So Entrada has released this, so it's, I believe, now available on their just wide website where you can go and purchase this. So that's number one. And then the other one is Presumed Innocent, the deluxe edition by Perez. They released the deluxe, which, expands upon the original John Williams soundtrack. And one of my favorite soundtracks that's just like a kind of a simple, like, mostly piano soundtrack. It's one for the 90s with Harrison Ford. I love this soundtrack growing up, so it's nice to get this treatment to it.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. Love it. I'll put those in the show notes if anyone wants to go listen to any of those albums. All right. App of the week. I know that not everyone is a home automation nerd, but we talked about home a little bit earlier. I'm going to do an app that I really like. I've, speaking to this idea of customizing home screens based on context. There's an app called Home Widget, which allows you to build your own widgets that you can put right on the home screen, which can like turn on and off accessories in your house. And there isn't otherwise a way to really do this on the home screen. Apple doesn't have a widget for the Home app. And when you see these kinds of apps, there's lots of apps that sort of do similar things to Apple Home or add features to Apple Home. But the way that these widgets are designed is exactly like it checks all the boxes for me. Like, it's exactly how, if I had the design chops, I would have made this kind of thing. The only thing I would change about it is that, unfortunately, home screen widgets still require you to open an app. So when you turn on or off an accessory, it quickly launches into the app, does its thing, and then closes it, which, I'm willing to. I also, on the Today view, if you swipe all the way over to the left, I have a Home Plus widget, which uses the older style Today widget. So those ones do not launch into the app to trigger the accessories. But I can
the advantage of that versus Control Center and like long pressing on the home icon. What's the rationale?
This is going to sound a little crazy, but first and foremost, sometimes I just don't really want to reach up there.
Okay, fair.
Secondly, sometimes Apple is really good about smartly putting the buttons I want there, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Thing number two, I like not having to. So the one in the Today view, that's the Home Plus app. I can swipe to that right from the lock screen. So I just hold up my phone to my face, swipe right one time,
right,
and then I can it still requires my face to authenticate, but it's authenticated by the time I do the swipe. So then I, can unlock some things or open the garage door real quick. So yeah, I mean, it's nice. And I've currently, my home screens are currently sort of organized by, like, I have a couple of ones that are just, like, my first two pages are just frequently used apps and widgets. But my third page is all health. It's like a health dashboard and app launcher. And then my fourth page is like a home dashboard and launcher. So the health thing's got like a water tracker with some buttons. It's got like my calorie intake and fat and all, my macros. That's what you call them, the macros.
Yeah.
And then like my home one is now just a couple of home apps. I use a lot, like the Nest app, the Eero app, and then it's got like this giant widget of tappable little buttons, and they're always in the same place. It never tries to smartly rearrange them based on context. It's just like the ones that I want to be there are there, and they're always there.
Cool. So my app is an Apple Watch app, and I'm one of those crazy people that often will leave their phone in the car to take a walk, or like I don't want to be reliant on my phone for everything. So Outcast is one of my favorite Apple Watch apps. It's a podcast app, and it works entirely on the watch itself. You can install it from the App Store without your phone nearby. You can then search for any podcast, add it to your watch. You can download podcasts over cellular super fast when your phone's not around. You can stream podcasts as well over cellular. It's bonkers. Like, if you want to live the Apple Watch only life for podcasts, this is the app. It's just so well done. It is I don't know how he wrote this thing because it's kind of boggling at how good it is. Like, just it's super stable, super polished. You can load up your watch with like endless podcasts, and I have. It's the reason when I look at my cellular data usage, my watch, like, how do you use 60 gigabytes of data on my watch this month? I don't think the carriers expect most people to use more than a couple 100 megabytes on their watch. But with this app, you can use that unlimited watch data plan to your heart's content.
You just made me realize what should have been my pick for the week, but I'll have to do it next time. But I'll tease it. It's rare. The Apple Watch it's limited what apps can do, and it's been around long enough that you don't see good apps come out every day, let alone ones that change how you use the watch. But the Timery time tracking app for Apple Watch is like one of the best Apple Watch apps I've ever used, and it only just like came out.
Yeah, I've heard good things.
Yeah, pretty recently. So, all right, I'll have to detail that more next time. You've inspired me.
Yeah, good Apple Watch apps are hard to come by, but the ones that are there, that some of them are just like, oh, this is so great. Like last year during the beta cycle, my phone was down for like far too long. It was like a week, and I was relying on my watch for all my podcasts. I was carrying around a little charger to make sure I would finish the day, because using cellular as much as I did was fun. Because there's also broadcasts. I was live streaming like Relay.fm podcasts on my watch, and that'll cook your wrist a little bit, because that live streaming a little bit more data usage than downloading a static file.
Are you using the Broadcasts app to listen to that?
Yeah,
Does that work over cellular on the Apple Watch? I have that.
It does. You could go for a run with just your watch and live stream.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's wild. Yeah,
that's a good app. I should mention it's an internet radio app, and if you have some favorite things you listen to that live stream, you just like need the correct URL. You kind of plug it right into the app. That's the only thing I use the app for. Is just for
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I've got Relay and Twit, and I think that's it. Put in there.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Well, I'm gonna do a reshare for my tech tip of the week, because it's one of those things. You sometimes see these. It's like if you follow this stuff and then you see someone do like a tweet or like a viral blog post, it's like one thing that why didn't anybody ever tell me you could do this on the iPhone? One of those kinds of things. And then they show it and you're like, oh, yeah, I've known that for years, but like someone who didn't know it, of course this would like change their life. So I'm going to say a thing that's like suited to all the teachers out there that I've said before, but if you haven't heard me say it, I just want to reiterate it, because there was like a tweet that went out earlier this week about this that a bunch of teachers were liking. So I'm going to give this feature some extra airtime. If you go on the Mac to the accessibility settings, you can create a keyboard shortcut, minus Control, that when holding the Control key and pinching with your trackpad or zooming with your mouse, it will zoom the entire display, not just the content from within that app. And this is so useful. It was useful in virtual teaching, but it's useful now. You just want to zoom into something that you want the kids to see with more focus. You hold the Control key, you zoom in, and then wherever your cursor was just gets really, really super freaking big. And it's so essential. It's also, not only is it like helpful for the relaying of information, but if you do it kind of like zoom in and out a lot with what you're doing when you're demonstrating a computer program, like something in your learning management software, or for me, I sometimes teach Noteflight and Soundtrap, which are on the web. They're both composition tools. I'm like about to click a little tiny button in Soundtrap, but I zoom in real close to it first, and it just like makes the tutorial feel more engaging to see motion. So for multiple reasons, go into your accessibility settings on the Mac and toggle this feature on. Let me make sure I actually say the exact place it is. So accessibility, then you need to go to the display. Nope, sorry. It's Zoom. It's the Zoom category. And then there's a checkbox that says use scroll gesture with modifier keys to zoom. And then you can choose your key. Mine is Control.
Mine is also in the accessibility section. This is on iPhone and iPad and probably the Mac, but I'm not quite sure since I don't really use the Mac anymore. But this is regarding if you're using your device late at night, and I find, the night shift mode just isn't quite enough. I think all the studies pretty much say you need entirely red light on lights at night for your brain not to be like, oh, it's time to wake up. So this will do just that. So in the display and text size area, you then go to color filters. You turn that on, and then you go and turn on color tint and turn the intensity and hue all the way up. And when you do this, it'll make all like the only light coming out of your phone will be red, pretty much, and white, and like it's a red. It's like turns your phone in the red mode, and you can. I've watched movies in this mode. It's a different experience, but you can you can still use your phone entirely and iPad entirely this way. And if you're using your phone in bed and your partner's trying to sleep, it won't drive them insane anymore because it's a red light. You can add this to your favorites. So in my control center area, I just hold down that. I can turn it on and off at will. You can link it to automations. Oh, actually, you can't link in automations yet, frustratingly, but you can add it to control center to turn it on and off as you need to. And it's something that I find extraordinarily helpful. And at times, even like I'll turn it on and be looking at my phone, and it helps me fall asleep just because, like, I don't know, whatever the serotonin that color spectrum releases kind of puts my brain into like it's time to go to sleep mode.
Yeah.
So that's my tech tip.
Okay, that's a good one. I gotta go to bed.
Yeah, it's late.
I'm Robbie Burns. Thanks for listening to Music Ed Tech Talk. You can find the show's page, show notes for the episode, and my blog at musicedtechtalk.com. You can subscribe to blog posts through an RSS app of your choice, and you can subscribe to the podcast in the podcast app of your choice. You can now get blog posts delivered right into your email inbox once a week. Please rate and review this show in the podcast app. It absolutely helps. It'll take a second and just a few taps. Word of mouth is helpful too, so please spread the word about it. Learn more about my music and teaching career at robbieburns.com. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube at Robbie Burns. Please consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/musicedtechtalk. All support tiers get perks, but even the base tier gets you a monthly video update with an app and music recommendation and some tech tips. Of course, also access to the Music Ed Tech Talk Discord community where you can chat with other supporters and guests of the show about music, apps, pedagogy, lesson ideas, tech support, and more. It's a fun place to be, and I hope to connect with you soon. Thanks to this week's sponsor, Scale Exercise Play Along Tracks. Be sure to check it out, and see you next time.